So if you could initially, if you're interested in asking a question, direct it through me and I'll then make sure that someone picks it up for you. I mean, then the speakers might leap in with enthusiasm, so we're not trying to control this over much, we're just to have an orderly proceeding. So are there any questions of our speakers? Or yes, questions I think we'll keep it to. Yes?
Just a question for the last speaker. I noticed that the component of nuclear energy had also sort of dropped off significantly, and I'm just wondering what the explanation is for that.
That's right. According to the existing legislation in Germany, nuclear energy has to be phased out by 2022. This is the law from 2002. The government that came into power in September last year is now discussing the question whether the lifetime of the existing nuclear power plants should be expanded for another 10 years maybe or so. That's not yet clear. That should be the outcome also of the energy strategy that is expected for October. So there is, but still it's just a question of expanding the lifetime of existing power plants. There's no discussion whatsoever about really new nuclear power plants.
Sorry, is that for pollution or cost reasons or a bit of everything?
There is no public acceptance, I think, in Germany for nuclear power plants for 4 reasons, I guess. The one reason is it's dangerous. We experienced the accident in Germany in 1986, and that is 4,000 cases from Germany, but still Germany experienced. I remember as a schoolboy, I wasn't allowed to go out in the school break because there was contamination around, so that's still reminding people. Number 2, we don't know what to do with the waste. We don't have a final disposable site, so we have some interim ones, and we have a lot of problems with those. So there is no trust that there is a real good solution to store the waste. And number 4, the costs. We have that one nuclear power plant built in Finland right now. After 3 years of construction, they're 3 years late, and the costs have doubled. And just recently, a study was published for the UK by a British economist arguing that under liberalised market conditions, nuclear power plants are not economically viable. So that's too expensive. But 4, this is always a concern for proliferation. You don't know what's going to happen with that stuff, and there are many grants around.
Thank you. Gentleman up there in the coat, the brown coat, I'm sorry, was first there? Yes.
I recently rang Western Power and informed them that I was spending $1,500 a year on power in my house. And under the federal government's new renewable program, in 20%, I asked them what would be the cost of my power for the same house in today's dollars. And they said my power cost would be somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000 a year, not $1,500 a year. I wonder how many people can afford that. And putting that in context...
Sorry, under what scenarios? Who's the question to? Can we keep the question coming?
Sorry, purely just the 20% renewable energy. Okay? Our power costs are going to go up by tenfold to when we meet that target. My question actually is to the third speaker. I did note, so wherever you are, that you did note that the carbon dioxide lags the temperature by 800 years. Well, there was correlation. It's not proved, but there's correlation. Why then don't you push the argument that the carbon dioxide increases in the atmosphere at the moment, we've noticed over the last 50 years, correlates with the medieval warm period, which you know about, which was 800,000 years ago? Why is there no 800,000 years ago? Why is it, you made a correlation?
Actually, it's very obvious because the rise in CO2 is. Let me just think. It's of course it's way past. Well, the medieval warm period is only according to the Northern Hemisphere, right? So it's not a global warming effect. If it is, it's just a mild warming. That present day rise in CO2 in temperature terms, translate to a much higher temperature rise.
You've got no evidence of that, but you've got evidence of
it's not. Sorry. Can we keep it as a question and answer session, because otherwise other people won't get a chance to have their say? So let Malcolm answer your question.
Yeah, I mean,
There are further
the
questions.
I'm kind of saying is that that the many even warm period has caused our present rise in CO2. I mean, that's basically your argument, right?
You know, it's not my argument, it's something it's
Yeah, I mean, that's
actually
a logical
considering.
conclusion. I mean, is it true that the many even warm period can account for our current CO2? The answer is no, of course it can't. And the simple reason is that the medieval warm period is quite a mild warming, and it's also located only in the northern hemisphere. And also the amount of warming is not sufficient to the equivalent rise in CO2 from that warm period. If it may have caused a minor increase in CO2, it would probably be about 10 ppm, that kind of level. We're talking about over 100 ppm. And those magnitudes come from, we know those relationships from the temperature CO2 things in the past. Okay? So if it followed the same relationship of this much warming causes this much CO2, the maximum it would have causes, I'd imagine, less than 10 ppm. So there's no way it can explain the absolute magnitude of our present rate.
Thank you, Malcolm. Put another one up here, yes?
Yes, this question comes as an ordinary layman, although I was a civil engineer from this university 50 years ago. But in trying to come to grips with understanding of the science, I see in the summary for policymakers the characterisation of the contributors to global warming in watts per square metre, in other words, radiator forcings, they're called. So I can understand how people measure the sun's radiation by various physical means, but do I gather that when they ascribe radiator forcing to things like CO2 and the other long-lived greenhouse gases, there's a lot of modelling done rather than measurement? And I guess broadly the question is, are people here tonight who are looking at the science happy with the way the IPC report, that's the first working group report, a summary for policymakers, characterise these radiator forcings, which is, to me, is very impressive, but can it be easily believed? Can you convince somebody else that there it is? You've got a net warming, I think, between 1750, industrialisation, and 2007, I think, the date of the last, the fourth report, assessment report. So are the scientists here happy with these watts per square metre ascribed to all there's cooling effects and warming effects and the net effect?
I can answer.
I was going to say, Kevin might be.
Yeah, sure, we are. As I showed you, that the models from 20 years ago accurately forecast what the changes will be over the last 20 years. The models we have today are much better than they had 20 years ago. You know, and these models are based upon physical understanding of experiments and of science that's over 100 years old. There's really no doubt about that. It's just a question of bringing them together and putting them into the models. And we've tested the models and we see that they've worked in the last 20 years. Scientists are very confident that the predictions that we make now are accurate, and the attribution of where the heating and what the causes that heating are accurate as well.
Thank you.
Could I just quickly add to that?
Good on you, John, thanks.
We can simulate how much heat CO2 traps, but we can also directly measure that using satellites. Satellites measure the radiation coming up from the Earth, radiating, escaping out to space. And what the satellites observe is exactly the same as what we simulate. So like this is our satellite measuring the changing heat over the last 30 years. And the big chunk taken out is the bite of CO2 takes out of the heat escaping to space. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you. Malcolm, did you want to add to that, or any of the other panellists?
Well, that's a useful concept to have still, because it's useful to look at, because when we compare the magnitude of oil forcing versus the CO2 drivers, it's nice to have this sort of relationship. Obviously, the oil forcing is watts per square metre, right? And have that as the equivalent term in CO2. It's a nice little comparison to that. So that's part of the history of why that's been done.
Any further questions? There's a gentleman over here.
Yes, I'd just like to bear on the modelling. You